let's talk about something that hits close to home for pretty much everyone: fairness at work. But, we're not just going to talk about feelings here. We're going to talk about data and how a really simple but powerful tool can help us find those unintentional biases and make our workplaces a whole lot more equitable. Okay, let's dive in. I mean, have you ever had that feeling, that nagging suspicion that something just wasn't quite right at work? Maybe a promotion that made you scratch your head, or a policy that just seemed to hold some people back. Well, that feeling, it's not just in your head. Workplace inequity is a huge source of stress and unhappiness, and it's a big reason why good people end up leaving their jobs. So let's unpack that connection a little bit. When we talk about unfairness, it's not just some HR buzzword or a legal thing. It's really fundamental to our well-being. A work environment that feels persistently unfair can have some serious long-term effects on an employee's mental and even physical health. To really get why, you've got to know the difference between two kinds of stress. You've got acute stress, that's the short-term pressure, right? Like a big deadline is coming up. It can even be a good thing, kind of motivating. But chronic stress, that's a whole different beast. It's that slow burn, that prolonged, constant pressure from an ongoing problem, like working in a place you feel is just fundamentally unfair. That kind of stress, it sticks around and it can lead to burnout, anxiety, and some really serious health issues. And this really highlights the real-world cost. As the researcher Bahoudin Mushtaba says here, this isn't just about people's feelings. It leads to very real, very negative outcomes for everyone, from super expensive lawsuits to losing your best people. So the main point here is fairness isn't just a nice to have. It's absolutely essential. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. When we hear the word discrimination, our minds usually jump to someone intentionally treating another person unfairly. But a whole lot of workplace bias, well, it isn't nearly that obvious. It's often hidden in systems and policies that, on the surface, seem totally neutral. And that brings us to this really key concept: disparate impact. Basically, this is when a policy, let's say a hiring test or a specific requirement for a promotion, is applied to every single person the exact same way. But in the end, it has a much more negative effect on one particular group of people. The discrimination wasn't on purpose, but the result is still the same. And this is where the legal stuff gets really interesting. See, disparate treatment is intentional. To prove it, you have to show that someone had a discriminatory motive. But with disparate impact, you don't need to prove what anyone was thinking. You just need to show the numbers, the cold, hard evidence that in neutral practice ended up having a biased result. This is a total game changer because it means we can actually use data to find the problem. So if data can reveal the problem, how do we actually use it to find a solution? Well, lucky for us, there's a surprisingly simple, data-driven tool designed to do exactly that. This whole idea comes from the field of HR analytics, which is all about using data about people to make smarter decisions. And as you can see, it's a really logical process. You set your goals, you get the data, you analyze it, and you find insights. It's all about moving from just guessing to actually knowing. And the specific tool we're going to use is called the 4/5 rule, or much easier to remember, the 80% rule. Think of it as a simple guideline, a quick check that's used to see if a certain practice might be having one of these disparate impacts. I know this might sound a little complicated, but I promise it's really straightforward when you see it in action. So let's do that. Let's walk through a real-world case study from our source material and see exactly how this thing works. Here's our game plan. It's a simple 5-step process. It takes us right from identifying the policy in question all the way through to the final answer. Let's break it down. All right, so here's our scenario. We're looking at the grades of 113 graduate students. The big question is, did the final grade show any unintentional bias based on gender? We've got 90 female students and 23 male students in our group. First up, we calculate the pass rate for the female students. So out of 90 students, 71 of them passed. You do the math, and that gives us a pass rate of 79%. Easy enough. Next, we do the same for the male students. 19 out of the 23 passed, which gives them a pass rate of 83%. So, right away, we can see the male students had the higher pass rate, and that number is going to be our benchmark. Okay, now for the most important step. To get what's called the impact ratio, we take the pass rate of the group with the lower rate, in this case the females, at 79%, and we divide it by the pass rate of the group with the higher rate, which was the males, at 83%. And when you run that simple calculation, what do you get? You get 95%. But what does that number actually mean? This is where that 80% rule finally comes in. The rule of thumb is if your result is below 80%, it's a red flag that there might be a problem. But our result is 95%, which is well above that 80% line. So what does that tell us? In this specific case, the data suggests the test was fair and didn't have a disparate impact based on gender. So we've just seen how a bit of simple math can be a really powerful check on our systems. But let's zoom back out. Why is it so incredibly important for any organization to actively look for and fix these hidden biases?
Well, because the benefits are just enormous. When people feel like they're being treated fairly, that chronic stress we talked about, it goes down. That leads to more happiness, which in turn fuels productivity. It helps you build a positive place where people actually want to stay and grow. And of course, it keeps the company away from some very real legal and financial headaches.
And let's not forget the bottom line here. Research clearly shows a direct link between an employee's happiness and their performance. So this isn't just about being nice. It's about building a smarter, more effective, and more successful organization for everybody. So I think the final takeaway is this. Fairness isn't just a feeling. It's something we can actually measure, manage, and ultimately improve. The tools are out there, which leaves us all with one last question to think about. What hidden biases could data reveal in your world?